For those of you who just joined or haven't watched the opening chapter, you can click the button in the top right corner of this screen. Welcome and enjoy the storyline on this channel. A few moments later, the sun slowly set behind the horizon, marking the end of a long day. Night then took over the sky, spreading a dark expanse adorned with thousands of sparkling stars. Below it, the city lights shone brightly, creating a view that was just as stunning and seemed to wrap the world in a deceptively calm atmosphere. On top of a building, Pluton was seen meeting with someone. The man immediately asked what was really going on. With undisguised curiosity, he questioned Pluton's reason for not having killed Kaiden the Destroyer until now. Hearing the question, Pluton just fell silent for a moment before turning his gaze toward the man. According to Pluton, defeating someone who is not in their best condition would only tarnish and disgrace his own dignity. That answer only made the man look disgusted. He called Pluton's name in a dissatisfied tone, then asked if Pluton really intended to waste such a golden opportunity. After all, the man understood very well that Kaiden, who had just defeated one of the top 10 rankers, would be a much more difficult opponent to face once he had fully recovered. However, Pluton questioned the meaning of that statement in return. Did the man really want him to ignore his own pride just for temporary gain? Hearing that question, the man let out a long sigh. For him, Pluton's dignity was not something important to consider. The man then reminded him that Pluton had sworn to fulfill Miss Gestela's request. Isn't it actually ignoring that request that would destroy the dignity he is so proud of? For a moment, Pluton fell silent again without giving any response. Not long after, he answered firmly, "What Gestela wants is only Kaiden's death, while the way to achieve it is for him to decide." Pluton's persistent attitude made the man's anger rise even more. In his mind, Pluton was just someone who was too stubborn, willing to let a valuable opportunity slip away just like that. Then the man changed the topic of conversation. If Pluton didn't intend to face Kaiden now, what about his student? That question made Pluton look surprised. The man then reminded him that not long ago, Kaiden's student managed to defeat Pheromone's student. Hearing that, Pluton asked what the real meaning behind the question was. According to the man, that achievement proved that Kaiden had trained his student very well and never treated his training as a game. While the man kept talking, Pluton's gaze grew sharper, as if he considered all those words to be nothing but nonsense. Casually, the man continued sharing his opinion. Seeing Jaewo's rapid progress, it was only a matter of time before that boy grew into someone much harder to stop. In other words, wouldn't it be wiser for Pluton to get rid of Jaewo first before his power grows any further? Hearing that suggestion, Pluton just gave a slight smile before letting out a long sigh. He then questioned whether that man truly wanted a ranked mutant like him to kill a child just because he was afraid of seeing that child grow stronger in the future. In fact, according to Pluton, that man should be ashamed of himself for even thinking such a thing. Those words immediately made the man even more upset. He told Pluton not to interfere in his business and ordered him to resolve the Kaiden issue immediately, with the cursed dignity that he held in such high regard. After that, the man turned around and got ready to leave. Before leaving the place, he mentioned that he would take care of Jaewo himself, the troublesome boy he considered a threat in the future. But just as he was about to walk away, his steps suddenly stopped. Something felt unusual. In front of him, the space seemed to tremble and split, creating a sudden spatial distortion. The sight shocked him instantly. At the same time, as soon as the spatial distortion formed, Pluton moved. With incredible speed, he shot toward the man. Unaware of the approaching danger, the man had no idea that Pluton's attack was already heading toward him. As Pluton was about to reach his target, the man suddenly turned around, unable to hide his panic. Without wasting any time, he immediately unleashed his power from his hand. In an instant, the two opposing energies collided violently, triggering a massive explosion that shook the area around them and lit up the night for a moment. A few seconds after the explosion occurred, from behind the thick smoke covering the rooftop, the man questioned Pluton's actions toward him. But before the situation could calm down, a hand suddenly shot out from the dust cloud at terrifying speed. That hand belonged to Pluton. In an instant, he had tightly grabbed the man's face, not giving him any chance to fight back. Without hesitation, Pluton jumped high into the air. Then he dragged his opponent's body downward with brutal force before slamming him directly onto the rooftop. The violent impact shook the entire building. Large cracks spread in all directions across the rooftop at the point of impact. Even the building they stood on seemed unable to withstand the tremendous pressure of the attack, suffering significant damage. As the man's body was buried in the pile of rubble, movement suddenly appeared within the scattered debris. Something was moving upward. Not long after, the man managed to free himself from the pile of rubble and shot up into the air. With great effort, he landed on the roof of another building not far from there, revealing a body now covered in wounds and quite serious injuries. With an annoyed tone, the man called out to Pluton, who was standing not far from his position. Anger was clearly visible on his face as he protested the sudden attack he had just received. At the same time, tremendous power began to radiate from both his arms and spread into the air around him. Seeing this, Pluton showed no hesitation at all. Instead, he ran straight at high speed toward the attack his opponent was launching. But right behind that wave of power, a massive explosion suddenly erupted. In an instant, Pluton's body was engulfed and trapped within the blaze of the explosion. With his face covered in blood, the man looked toward the billowing smoke rising high. In his assessment, Pluton was nothing more than a foolish bastard. Even though he acknowledged Pluton's extraordinary physical strength, he still felt that such a reckless attack should never have been made. Not long after, behind the lingering haze of smoke in the air, a shadow began to move. The figure slowly became clearer. In the next instant, Pluton jumped out of the explosion and managed to free himself from the trap set by his opponent. The sight shocked the man, as he did not expect it at all. Without wasting any time, the man immediately launched a new attack toward Pluton. But at the same time, Pluton also threw his punch and struck the attack directly. The clash of the two forces once again shook the battlefield. Realizing the unfavorable situation, the man immediately jumped back to keep his distance and avoid Pluton. With his body already in a miserable state due to his injuries, he saw Pluton as nothing short of a monster. In his mind, a question arose as to whether Pluton was really serious about continuing the fight with him. Meanwhile, Pluton firmly stated that the man should not interfere in his fight with Kaiden. Hearing that statement, the man once again questioned the true meaning behind Pluton's words. According to Pluton, if the man were to lay a hand on Jaewo, who is Kaiden's student, then Kaiden would not be able to fully concentrate during their fight. That reason only made the man even more disgusted. To him, Pluton had never stopped saying unreasonable things from the very beginning. He even reminded him that Gestela was the one who had saved Pluton. However, Pluton immediately emphasized one thing. The person who saved him was indeed Gestela, but it was not the man who was standing in front of him right now. With a serious look that left no room for debate, Pluton ordered the man to leave and tell Gestela that he himself would decide when the right time to act would be. Hearing that statement, the man finally fell silent. No more words came out of his mouth. He just stood there, frozen, staring at Pluton with a cynical look in his eyes, as if holding back anger that hadn't completely faded. A while later, the afternoon at Jaewo's house felt much calmer than usual. At that moment, Jaewo looked surprised when he found out that during the isolated training period, he most likely wouldn't be able to meet or contact his friends at all. In the middle of the conversation, Kaiden was seen sitting relaxed on the sofa while observing his surroundings. Next to him, Kaiden was busy enjoying snacks with his usual lazy expression. Meanwhile, Pluton was seen gnawing on a bone toy, paying no attention to their conversation. Then, Subin began to explain that even though it was called an isolated training period, in reality, they would just be training for a very long time while locking themselves in a special room. Hearing that explanation, Jaewo immediately asked if Jisuk and Woin would also be joining the training. Woin confirmed it without hesitation. According to Subin, Woin had agreed to help with the training process and become a full member of the union, including all the responsibilities that come with it. Hearing that explanation, Jaewo just fell silent while processing everything. Not long after, Jisuk added that they could no longer be lazy now. After all, Jaewo had already left them far behind in terms of power development. In addition, Subin also explained that they had actually been training regularly all this time. However, they began to realize that their powers were not developing any further. That's why Subin finally asked the union leader and Jung for their opinion, and they concluded that the three of them were experiencing a barrier in their power growth. Hearing that, Jaewo became curious and asked about the reason behind the barrier. Subin then explained slowly that this condition doesn't mean they are getting weaker or experiencing a decline in their abilities. The barrier only indicates that their growth is starting to stabilize before they can move on to the next stage. If there is something they manage to overcome, then the barrier can collapse on its own. However, everyone has different circumstances, and the way to overcome them is not easy to find. While scratching his cheek in confusion, Jaewo said that he felt he had never experienced anything like that before. Hearing this, Jisuk just let out a long sigh. According to her, that's because Jaewo always fought against opponents who were much stronger than him, and somehow always managed to survive, even win the fight. Jaewo had also risked his life many times, and those unusual experiences definitely helped his growth as a mutant. Jisuk's words finally made Jaewo start to understand his situation. Meanwhile, Kaiden, who had been observing their conversation, crossed his arms and thought that Jisuk was right. Unlike Kaiden and Pluton, who didn't comment at all and remained busy with their snacks and toys. Then Subin continued her explanation. According to someone who once talked to her about it, anyone who manages to overcome that obstacle will develop much faster as a mutant, even though no one really knows exactly how the process works. Anyway, Subin felt that he had to become stronger in order to face everything. Not long after, Jaewo asked how long the secluded training period would last. Subin paused for a moment, then answered that the training might last for half a year, or even a full year, until they managed to overcome the barrier. Hearing that, Jaewo was surprised again. He asked once again whether he really wouldn't be able to meet, contact, or even just exchange messages with them during the training, and Subin confirmed it. For a moment, Jaewo just fell silent, with a sad expression slowly appearing on his face. Imagining that he wouldn't be able to meet them for such a long time weighed heavily on him. Then, Jaewo looked at Subin, Jisuk, and Woin, who were also looking back at him at that moment. In his mind, Jaewo realized that he had been with them for so long. Their presence around him felt so ordinary that he never really thought about how it would feel if all of that suddenly disappeared. Jaewo thought to himself, there were times when they didn't meet for weeks, but this time was different. This time, they might not even see each other for months. Suddenly, Jaewo could only lower his head and remain silent. Meanwhile, Woin, Jisuk, and Subin looked at Jaewo with a growing sense of worry on their faces. And seeing Jaewo react like that, Jisuk unconsciously quietly gritted his teeth. With an annoyed expression, Jisuk suddenly shouted, demanding to know why Jaewo looked like that. In his opinion, if someone else saw Jaewo's face right now, they would definitely think that Jaewo was never going to see them again. Jisuk's shout even startled Subin right away. Not stopping there, Jisuk continued speaking. In his opinion, Jaewo should start thinking about whether they really want to go through with all of this. Hearing that, Jaewo's expression turned confused. With an annoyed tone, Jisuk said that from that moment on, people only recognized Jaewo's name. In fact, no one ever talked about them anymore, even though all this time, they had always fought and faced everything together with Jaewo. Letting out a long sigh, Subin finally concluded that it meant Jaewo was now on a completely different level from them. Honestly, Subin felt very happy to see Jaewo's incredible progress. Sooner or later, Jaewo would definitely be recognized at the global level, and all of that even felt like an unreal dream. But on the other hand, part of him still felt annoyed. After all, Jaewo's growth was too fast. Meanwhile, they couldn't keep up with his pace. Then Woin added that actually, they all wanted to keep walking side by side with Jaewo. They wanted to stay together, just like before. Even though it felt disappointing, Subin still asked Jaewo to wait for them to improve. For a moment, Jaewo was just silent. All the words from Subin, Jisuk, and Woin slowly filled his mind. Jaewo's lips even seemed to tremble slightly after hearing all the honest feelings of his friends. With eyes that began to shine, Jaewo finally said that he would wait for their growth. Hearing that answer, Subin immediately showed a wide smile. Suddenly, Subin enthusiastically threw a pillow in another direction, which accidentally hit Woin's face. In a cheerful tone, Subin said that tonight they should have fun all night long. Hearing that, Jisuk immediately got excited and grabbed a pillow to start their little pillow fight. Meanwhile, Woin just gave a slight smile, even though he was actually annoyed by Subin's behavior. Without hesitation, Woin immediately threw a pillow to retaliate. Seeing the chaos, Subin and Jaewo burst out laughing. On the other hand, Kaiden smiled slightly while resting his chubby cheek on his hand. He let out a long sigh when he saw the commotion caused by Jaewo and his friends. Meanwhile, Kaiden just stayed quiet while watching them from a distance. Unlike Pluton, who had only been watching them while quietly holding his bone toy. But elsewhere, the man who had previously met Pluton was now seen standing alone on the rooftop of a building. His face was still filled with annoyance after his conversation with Pluton earlier. He remembered how Pluton had seriously warned him to never touch Jaewo, Kaiden's student. Pluton even asked him not to look for or approach Jaewo at all. Firmly, Pluton said at that time that all of it made him feel uneasy. Thinking about that, the man immediately swore inwardly. In his opinion, Pluton, who was nothing more than a scoundrel, really had a lot of nerve to dare order him around. However, the man still argued that at that time, he hadn't really fought seriously against Pluton. In his opinion, Pluton wouldn't even be able to fight well against Kaiden if his body was already injured from a previous battle. He even started thinking, what if only Pluton wasn't under Gestela's orders? Suddenly, a dark thought appeared in his mind. The man realized that after Pluton finished facing Kaiden, he could easily kill Pluton without hesitation. In his mind, the fight definitely wouldn't be easy. However, if everything happened after Pluton fought against Kaiden, then even a monster like Pluton definitely wouldn't be in his best condition. Slowly, a sly smile began to appear on the man's face. He finally decided that he would make his move after Pluton finished his mission. After all, he felt that Gestela would never hold him accountable for that. But then, the man realized something as he stood on top of the building. Down below, Jaewo could be seen strolling casually with Woin, Jisuk, and Subin in the calm of the night. Seeing Jaewo right in front of him now, the man immediately stared at him without blinking. In his mind, he was convinced that the boy in front of him was none other than Jaewo, Kaiden's student who had recently started attracting a lot of attention. From the top of the building, the man kept watching Jaewo, who was casually walking with his friends, as if he was completely unaware of the danger lying in wait for them in the distance. While walking slowly under the sparkling night lights, Jaewo invited Subin, Jisuk, and Woin to stay over at his house, considering how late it was getting. However, Subin honestly explained that he actually wanted to accept the invitation, but he really couldn't go if he decided to stay over tonight. Hearing that explanation, Jaewo realized that was the reason they had been refusing his invitation all along. Then, Subin slowly revealed his feelings. For him, going through even the toughest training was not a big problem. However, thinking that they wouldn't be able to have fun together with Jaewo for a long time felt much heavier and more regrettable. Jisuk immediately agreed. Woin also nodded his head slowly, as if he felt the same way. Knowing his friend's feelings, Jaewo just gave a faint smile. His gaze turned warm, full of meaning that was hard to express in words. Without hesitation, Jaewo immediately hugged them all tightly. With a spirited voice, he said that he would also keep training hard while waiting for them to return from their secluded training. While patting Jaewo's shoulder, Subin said that if they all became too strong, the balance of their group would actually be disrupted. That's why Jaewo also had to keep improving, and he must not stop training. Not long after, Jisuk called Jaewo's name. With full confidence, Jisuk held his fist out, inviting Jaewo to bump fists, while saying that after the training was over, he wanted to have a serious match against Jaewo. Hearing that, Jaewo immediately agreed. He clenched one of his fists and responded to the fist bump without hesitation. For a moment, Jaewo and Jisuk's fists met under the night sky, while Subin and Woin just smiled, watching that simple yet meaningful moment. Not long after, Subin, along with Jisuk and Woin, started saying goodbye to Jaewo. They told Jaewo to be careful on his way home. Seeing that, Jaewo just smiled while slowly waving his hand. But then, something unusual began to happen. Jaewo felt a strange energy slowly surrounding his body. In an instant, the energy spread very quickly, soaring high into the air, then surrounding Jaewo from all directions. Subin, Woin, and Jisuk also immediately felt the same strange pressure. Their bodies seemed to be held back by a mysterious force that suddenly appeared without warning. Not long after, the man who had been standing on top of the building finally spoke. In a cold tone, he questioned whether they were all mutants as well. Hearing the unfamiliar voice, Jaewo, Jisuk, Woin, and Subin immediately fell silent. Their gazes simultaneously turned toward the source of the echoing voice from above. In front of them stood a mysterious man on top of the building, staring sharply at Jaewo's group. The man, whose identity was still unknown, now openly showed his malicious intent. It was as if that peaceful night was about to turn into the beginning of a new threat. For a moment, they all fell silent and stared at the mysterious man who stopped them in their tracks in the quiet of the night. With a piercing, sharp gaze, the man looked at Jaewo and his friends without showing the slightest bit of friendliness. The aura he radiated felt so heavy, it was as if the air around them became tense as well. Realizing the pressure, Jaewo started to feel nervous. In his mind, he realized that just standing in front of that man was enough to make his body feel pressured. Not long after, the man jumped down from the rooftop and landed right in front of them. In a cold tone, he called Jaewo Kaiden's student. The man then said that he didn't expect to meet Jaewo in person like this. Hearing those words, Jaewo immediately understood something. In his mind, he had already suspected that the man's arrival was indeed to meet him. Suddenly, from behind, Subin called out to the man and asked why he was there. Hearing Subin's voice, Jaewo immediately turned toward her. Casually, the man said that apparently there was still someone who recognized him now. Subin's gaze turned cynical. In a firm tone, she mentioned a name that made the atmosphere even more tense: Blues Stalin. Subin then explained that Blues was one of the top 50 mutants in the world. Those words immediately shocked Jaewo, Jisuk, and Woin. In his mind, Jaewo started to panic. He wondered if a world-ranked mutant really came just to capture him tonight. Without wasting any time, Jaewo immediately shouted, telling his friends to leave the place right away. However, Woin, Jisuk, and Subin looked surprised when Jaewo suddenly told them to run away. In a strained voice, Jaewo shouted again and asked if Blues really came to catch him. If that's true, Jaewo asked Blues to let his friends go and deal only with him. Hearing those words, Jisuk, who was standing behind, immediately snapped at Jaewo and told him to stop saying such foolish things. But Jaewo remained adamant, ordering them to leave immediately. Hearing Jaewo's words, Jisuk, Woin, and Subin fell silent. None of them moved to leave the place. Meanwhile, Blues just chuckled at the situation. For him, their friendship felt quite touching to witness. But in the next moment, the atmosphere changed completely. Suddenly, Blues began bearing down on Jaewo and his friends with his terrifying power. With a sinister grin, Blues said that no one would be able to escape from that place tonight. His gaze grew even colder as he declared that they would all die by his hand. Without warning, Blues unleashed his power in all directions. The energy he emitted shot out rapidly. It passed by Jaewo, Jisuk, Woin, and Subin, making them instinctively cover their faces from the force of his power. As Blues' power continued to soar into the sky, Jaewo slowly lifted his head upward. His body began to tremble violently. In his mind, Jaewo felt as if he was being choked by an overwhelming pressure. Even moving seemed impossible. At that moment, Jaewo began to realize that this was the true power of a mutant ranked among the world's top 50. While the pressure continued to bear down on them, Blues spoke again. At first, he thought the rumors about Kaiden having a student were just nonsense. But he truly didn't expect that Kaiden, someone known for only caring about himself, would actually choose to take on a student. And out of all the rumors going around, that name always pointed to Jaewo. Blues then added that recently, he also heard news about Jaewo managing to defeat Ian, the grandson of Pheromone. Because of that, Blues had no choice but to start acknowledging Jaewo's abilities. And finally, tonight, he was able to meet Kaiden's student in person. Not long after, Blues increased the power of his smoke again. The pressure locking Jaewo's body became even stronger, making Jaewo even more nervous and struggling to breathe. With a wicked grin on his face, Blues said that he was curious to see how Kaiden would react if his beloved student died here. Suddenly, the black smoke emitted by Blues began to crawl up, wrapping around Jaewo's hands and feet like living chains choking his body. And as soon as one of Jaewo's legs was touched by the smoke, the skin on his leg was immediately torn and covered in wounds in an instant. Meanwhile, the thick smoke emitted by Blues slowly began to creep towards Subin, who immediately tried to hold it back with her ice powers. Unfortunately, the ice barrier created by Subin was instantly destroyed, as if it meant nothing in the face of Blues' power. In an instant, the black smoke mercilessly surrounded her body once again. Seeing the situation, Jisuk immediately asked Subin to step aside and let him try to handle it. Instantly, Jisuk focused all his attention. His gaze turned white, while the energy around his body began to surge. With all his strength, Jisuk unleashed his wind power to dispel the terrifying smoke that kept spreading from Blues' body. The powerful gust of wind made Subin and Won instinctively shield their faces, while the billowing smoke began to be pushed back by Jisuk's wind pressure. However, that hope did not last long. Jisuk grimaced in pain as Blues' smoke grew even thicker and kept pressing against his body, instead of disappearing as he had hoped. Seeing their futile efforts, Blues just smiled calmly. He told Jisuk not to be too disappointed. With a dismissive tone, Blues said that at their current level, it was impossible for Jisuk and the others to be able to fend off his power. But before Blues could finish speaking, a huge explosion went off right in front of his face. Apparently, the attack came from Woin, who launched his assault without the slightest hesitation. Behind the cloud of smoke from the explosion, Blues spoke again in a cold tone. According to him, they were all truly unlucky tonight. Blues even thought that if they had a little more time to develop, they might have grown into mutants with quite promising talents. Meanwhile, Jaewo, who was still under pressure from Blues' smoke power, slowly glanced backward. He saw his friends starting to struggle against the terrifying attack. Realizing the situation, Jaewo immediately strengthened his resolve. In his mind, he told himself that now was not the time to think about fear or other bad possibilities. All he had to do was buy time so his friends could escape. Instantly, right in front of Blues, Jaewo took a crouching position. From his body, the power of electric lightning began to radiate strongly and burst into the air. Using his activation phrase, Jaewo called out his electric lightning ability. In an instant, his gaze turned white. Meanwhile, flashes of lightning began to strike wildly around his body. Seeing that change, Blues fell silent for a moment. For the first time, his expression showed surprise. Not long after, Jaewo shot forward at high speed toward Blues. His movements were so fast that his shadow seemed to blend with the lightning that enveloped his body. As they drew closer, Jaewo raised one of his hands, preparing to deliver his finishing blow directly. However, facing that attack, Blues just stood still without showing any reaction at all. In an instant, a huge explosion shook the area. The building behind Blues was even destroyed by the force of that tremendous impact. Moments after Jaewo's blow landed, flashes of lightning continued to radiate from his body. However, what they saw made the atmosphere even more tense. Jaewo's powerful punch was actually easily blocked by Blues, as if the attack didn't have any significant effect on him at all. Blues then said that now he finally understood how Jaewo was able to defeat Ian, Pheromone's grandson. At that moment, Blues began to realize that Jaewo's previous victory was clearly not a coincidence. Even though one of his arms was still being held by Blues, Jaewo remained focused and didn't lose his composure. Slowly, he began reciting his activation phrase again. A moment later, Jaewo invoked his Zero Impact ability. A much greater surge of lightning energy burst violently from his body. Seeing that change, Blue's eyes widened instantly. For the first time, he truly witnessed it, the great power that Jaewo was about to unleash right in front of him. Not long after that, a tremendous lightning explosion burst in all directions, creating a massive shockwave that even soared high into the night sky. On the other side, Jisuk, Woin, and Subin, who were still at the same location, immediately covered their eyes from the blinding light that shone from Jaewo's lightning explosion. The lightning explosion was so powerful that it even created an incredible gust of wind, causing Jaewo's 3 friends to be affected and almost lose their balance. Moments after the powerful explosion, thin wisps of smoke could still be seen slowly spreading in the night air. But behind the smoke, Blues was still standing tall without flinching at all, easily blocking Jaewo's punch. Seeing this, Blues just stayed silent. There was no expression of panic or pain on his face. It was as if Jaewo's powerful attack just now meant nothing to him at all. Meanwhile, Jaewo widened his eyes in shock. In his mind, he couldn't believe the fact that his attack couldn't even hurt Blues in the slightest. For Jaewo, it truly didn't make any sense. Not long after, Blues finally spoke up. In a calm tone, he said that he had actually suspected all of this from the very beginning. While still gripping Jaewo's arm tightly, Blues began to press Jaewo's body down even further. With an intimidating cold stare, he said that he had to kill Jaewo tonight. Those words immediately shocked Jaewo. The nervousness inside him grew even stronger when he realized that his opponent truly intended to finish him off without hesitation. But suddenly, a voice was heard from another direction, breaking the tension that filled the place. The voice said that someone had already warned Blues not to interfere. Hearing those words, Blues immediately fell silent for a moment. Quickly, Blues turned around and saw someone moving toward him. From above, Blues saw Pluton appear and jump down toward him at high speed. In a firm tone, Pluton warned Blues not to interfere in his business. Suddenly, a tremendous impact occurred. Pluton shot forward like a bullet toward Blues, who was standing right in front of Jaewo, then struck the area with terrifying force, creating a massive shockwave and destruction that spread in all directions around them. Moments after Pluton appeared and struck Blues without hesitation, thick clouds of smoke immediately billowed high into the air. Behind the dense fog, the faint silhouette of someone stood firmly amid the fresh destruction. Not long after, Pluton emerged from behind the smoke, revealing himself with an intimidating aura that felt so heavy. Seeing Pluton, Jaewo immediately let out a sigh of relief and called his name without hesitation. On the other side, Blues stomped his foot hard, trying to stabilize his body after previously taking a brutal blow from Pluton. Now, in front of Pluton, Blues stood there staggering, his body covered in wounds and his breath heavy and labored. With an annoyed expression he couldn't hide, Blues judged that Pluton had been far too disrespectful toward him. However, without giving him the slightest chance, Pluton immediately grabbed one of Blues' legs tightly. In one rough motion, Blues' body was lifted just like that, before finally being slammed hard onto the surrounding rubble. Before Blues could recover, Pluton forcefully yanked him back again. With furious steps, Pluton walked while dragging Blues, who was still gripped in his hand. In the midst of his anger, Pluton shouted loudly at Blues, venting his frustration because the man dared to ignore his previous warning. Without mercy, Pluton slammed Blues' body to the ground again with terrifying force. The hard impact cracked the ground, and debris flew in all directions. Pluton's anger still hadn't subsided. After slamming Blues' body once more, Pluton pulled him back before finally hurling him far away. With a cold, forceful tone, Pluton ordered Blues to get out of his sight immediately. Blues' body shot uncontrollably, crashing into a building with tremendous force. Pluton's powerful throw even sent Blues' body crashing through several buildings at once, unable to stop his momentum. Moments later, a massive explosion shook the area again, as Blues' body kept crashing through building after building in his path. On the other side, Jaewo, Woin, Jisuk, and Subin could only stand in silence. They were truly stunned by the terrifying power displayed by Pluton. In his mind, Jaewo finally realized one thing, that Pluton was actually far stronger than he had ever imagined. Meanwhile, Pluton stood tall in the midst of the thin smoke that surrounded his body. His figure looked so sturdy, as if all the destruction around him meant nothing to him at all. Not long after, the sound of Blues screaming in pain could be heard from afar. When Pluton turned his gaze toward the 2 o'clock position, he saw Blues trying to stand on the roof of a building. his body already covered in severe wounds. With heavy breaths and a face full of anger, Blues judged that Pluton had truly gone mad. He felt that he had held back before out of respect for Miss Gestela, but Pluton kept belittling him without stopping. In response to that, Pluton just acted casually. He even told Blues to stop using Gestela as an excuse. In Pluton's eyes, Blues was a nobody. Those words immediately made Blues even angrier. With a tense voice, Blues asserted that from now on, he wouldn't care anymore whether Pluton would follow Gestela's orders or not. For him, what matters most now is to finish off Pluton first, then kill Kaiden afterwards. Immediately, Blues, who was standing at the edge of the rooftop, released his smoke power in all directions. The dark aura emanating from his body began to fill the surrounding area with an increasingly oppressive pressure. Hearing the threat, Pluton just grinned slightly. With a dismissive tone, he questioned Blues' confidence in thinking he could kill him. He even told Blues to stop saying things that made him want to laugh. Soon after, the ground beneath them began to shake violently. Cracks slowly appeared and spread in all directions. Apparently, the terrifying tremor came from the surge of Pluton's power that was now being unleashed without restraint. On the other hand, Subin and Jisuk tried to keep their balance, as the ground beneath their feet shook violently. Meanwhile, Woin, who was at the very front, immediately held onto Jaewo's body to keep him from falling due to the overwhelming force filling the area. Realizing that the situation was getting more out of control and dangerous, Subin immediately shouted, asking all his friends to leave the place at once, because if they stayed there, they could get dragged into that high-level battle. Hearing Subin's shout, Pluton paused for a moment and glanced back, as if to check his surroundings. Without wasting any time, he immediately took a stance and planted his feet firmly on the ground. With an explosive burst of speed, Pluton shot high into the air, heading straight for Blues' position on top of the building. Meanwhile, Blues, whose face was already covered in bruises and blood, just grinned. While raising both his hands, he belittled Pluton's fighting style, thinking it only relied on brute endurance and random attacks. In the air, Pluton pierced through an area filled with thick black smoke that kept spreading into the sky. His gaze grew sharper, and his forehead furrowed as he tried to see through the visual disturbance created by Blues. Not long after, a huge explosion occurred on the rooftop of the building, shaking the surrounding area with a powerful tremor. Seeing that, Subin, Jisuk, Woan, and Jaewo reflexively covered their faces with their arms to protect themselves from the impact of the explosion. A moment later, Jaewo slowly opened his eyes, and his expression immediately changed to shock as he realized something. In the midst of the billowing smoke, it was clear that Pluton was still charging through the attack. Now he was already very close to Blues, who was standing on the rooftop. Without hesitation, Pluton threw his punch at Blues, creating a huge explosion at the point of impact. But quickly, Blues managed to dodge by jumping backward. Seeing Pluton's persistence that didn't waver at all, Blues threw an insult and called him nothing more than a stubborn bastard. In the air, Blues gathered his smoke power again and launched a follow-up attack, while stating his desire to see how long Pluton could hold out. At that moment, Pluton, standing on the rooftop, was again targeted by a thick cloud of smoke rushing toward him. Another explosion occurred in the air. This time, it hit the rooftop area where Pluton was standing, causing part of the building structure to collapse and debris to fall down. But just after the explosion subsided, Pluton's shadow could faintly be seen still standing behind the thick cloud of smoke. In an instant, Pluton moved quickly again, darting toward Blues with his hand ready to grab. His movement was so fast that he immediately managed to grab Blues by the collar, surprising his opponent because he had escaped the previous attack. Realizing he was caught, Blues immediately tried to break free and launched a close-range attack directly at Pluton. However, when an opening appeared, Blues immediately took advantage of the momentum to jump in another direction and get away from the grip. Not long after, Pluton was already standing right in front of Blues, who was now gasping for breath. With complete calm and confidence, Pluton questioned why Blues had been so sure he could kill him. But now, he was instead trying to run away without any clear direction. Those words only fueled Blues' anger even more. On the other hand, Subin was stunned to witness Pluton's incredible resilience, as he didn't seem hurt at all even after taking attacks from a top-ranked mutant. Hearing that, Jaewo just fell silent. In his mind, Jaewo realized that just as Subin had said, Pluton took extremely powerful attacks as if they were no real threat, relying solely on his body to withstand them without wavering at all. At that moment, Jaewo was suddenly filled with deep curiosity. How could Pluton fight in such a way? Jaewo's memory then returned to his conversation with Kaiden, when it was explained that anyone who faced Pluton would have an extremely difficult battle. According to Kaiden, Pluton had a unique and terrifying fighting style because he often took most of the attacks with just his own body, then retaliated in a brutal way like a raging bull, causing his opponents to lose their bearings in the fight. When he first heard about that fighting style, Kaiden was confused about what it meant. But from the perspective of the opponents who actually faced him, that experience felt more like a trauma that was hard to forget. According to Kaiden, it's very difficult for someone to accept the reality that their attacks have almost no effect and might not even hurt Pluton at all. On the other hand, Pluton never gave his opponents any room to prepare a powerful follow-up technique. Jaewo, who was playing with his cat at the time, just stayed silent without giving any response. Kaiden then let out a long sigh and emphasized that Pluton's physical endurance is at an extraordinary level. He continued that Kaiden's combat strength is indeed capable of taking down the top 10 rankers if they are unprepared. And because of Kaiden's cunning nature, most of them even choose to avoid him. However, it's different with Pluton. The situation is actually the opposite. In Kaiden's mind, fighting Pluton is something much more difficult and overwhelming. There are even rumors that Pluton's endurance has surpassed that of the top 10 rankers. In the midst of the ongoing battle, the thick smoke emitted by Blues quickly spread throughout the entire area. This immediately surprised Jaewo and Woin, because the attack even reached the spot where they were standing. Not long after, Blues called out to Pluton again in an annoyed tone. The thick smoke he controlled kept spreading relentlessly, constricting the surrounding area and dominating the entire battlefield. In the midst of that situation, Blues stated that he wanted to see how long Pluton's incredible defense could withstand his power. As Blues hovered in the air while releasing a terrifying pressure of smoke, Pluton simply looked up from his position below, right in the area of the building that was now starting to be covered by thick black fog. The smoke kept spreading without pause, swallowing the entire area under Blues' control. Jaewo, who witnessed the situation, felt annoyed, judging that Blues seemed to intend to direct all his power just to pressure Pluton in one big attack. Seeing the situation becoming more dangerous, Subin immediately took the initiative and asked all of them to combine their strength and form a protective shield. Without waiting any longer, Jaewo, Jaewo, Woin, and Subin raised both their arms, forming an energy barrier to withstand the pressure of the smoke that kept approaching. The shield managed to withstand most of the pressure. Even so, Blues' thick smoke kept trying to break through their defenses and continued to flow past the protective barrier. Meanwhile, Blues, who was still floating in the air, kept focusing his power, completely trapping Pluton under the increasingly dense pressure of the smoke. From behind the black mist, he asserted that within that area, Pluton would have no room to escape, and he would blow Pluton's body apart without hesitation. The smoke emitted by Blues kept increasing, until finally, the entire area where Pluton stood was completely covered. Pluton's figure could no longer be seen, completely submerged in the thick mist that dominated the battlefield. On the other hand, Woin began to realize that something was wrong. The shield they built slowly began to show signs of cracking. Subin immediately realized it and shouted that their shield was starting to break. Jaewo urged the others to keep resisting. Meanwhile, Jaewo put all his strength into keeping the shield from collapsing. Amidst the overwhelming power, Blues with his dark gaze shouted again. He declared that Pluton must now prepare to face the death that awaits him. Not long after, a massive surge of energy exploded in the sky, which was beginning to darken. From below, only Jaewo and the others could be seen still holding on with all their strength behind their protective shields. Sweat drenched the faces of Jaewo, Subin, and Woin as they struggled to maintain the shield with all the strength they had left. The pressure they endured felt heavier with each passing second, as if the force outside kept increasing uncontrollably. At the same time, Jaewo noticed something beyond the thick darkness that covered the battlefield. From a distance, a bright light pierced through the dense smoke, and that light came from Pluton's power, which was still holding on amid the terrifying pressure. Now, Pluton could be seen preparing himself to break through the smoke that covered the entire area, with the beam of light growing stronger and piercing the dark sky above them. For a moment, Pluton's eyes narrowed and turned white, indicating his full focus on a single attack point. At full speed, he shot forward like a meteor falling from the sky, tearing through the air toward his target without a hint of hesitation. From above, Blues, still floating in the air, suddenly noticed a flash of light streaking toward it at incredible speed. With his expression turning instantly serious, Pluton kept piercing through the thick fog created by Blues, ignoring all the pressure trying to stop him, thanks to his extraordinary physical endurance. Just a moment before the attack reached Blues, his opponent froze, unable to react in time. He was shocked because he didn't expect Pluton to break through the deadly fog he created. And now the attack was right in front of him. The next second, a tremendous explosion occurred in the air. A massive collision of energy exploded like a burning meteor, emitting a blinding light and waves of heat that struck mercilessly in all directions. After the powerful explosion faded, thin smoke still lingered in the sky, slowly dispersing. Amidst the destruction that lingered around the battlefield, Pluton stood tall among the debris, his body remaining firm as if the recent impact wasn't enough to bring him down. On the other side, Jaewo, along with Jisuk, Subin, and Woin, were thrown back by the impact of the explosion, but not long after, they got back up, still shocked by the power they had just witnessed, realizing that both Pluton and Blues were truly on a level of strength that was almost monstrous. Pluton himself remained silent in the middle of the scorched area, standing within the circle of destruction surrounding him. His eyes gazed at the sky, which was starting to calm down again. Then, calmly, he concluded that Blues had chosen to retreat and escape. He then suggested that Jaewo and the others return immediately, believing that Blues was not truly dead yet. But the wounds he suffered were severe enough that he was no longer a threat for now. Jaewo agreed, then anxiously asked about Pluton's condition. But Pluton calmly replied that wounds like that were nothing significant to him. Seeing that, Subin couldn't hide his admiration. He admitted that Pluton was able to withstand an attack from a top 50 ranked mutant with his own body. Even Jisuk added that Pluton was truly remarkable. Meanwhile, Woin just stayed silent, staring with eyes still filled with shock. Jisuk then emphasized that the rumors about Pluton's physical endurance being the strongest in the world seemed to be true. Elsewhere, the atmosphere felt much calmer. The clear sky stretched out once again, and beneath it, a light shot by at high speed before crashing into the roof of a building. The strong vibration startled and panicked a cat that was there. The figure that fell turned out to be Blues, who was now fleeing after receiving a deadly attack from Pluton. His body looked badly injured and he was gasping for breath. Blues stood up, his body trembling. He still couldn't believe that all the attacks he launched weren't able to bring Pluton down at all. In the midst of that frustration, he began to question what kind of creature Pluton really was, and realized that without Pluton's interference, he might have been able to finish off Jaewo, Kaiden's student, easily. But he thought back to the previous fight against Jaewo. Even though it was still very easy, Jaewo showed power far beyond his expectations. Blues began to realize that if he wasn't stopped soon, Jaewo would grow into a threat just as troublesome as Kaiden in the future. That thought made him even more annoyed. Without him realizing it, from a distance, a large shadow was silently watching him, Kaiden in the form of a cat. A moment later, Blues sensed something approaching. He immediately turned around alertly, only to find a large cat standing near him, calmly swishing its tail. For a moment, he thought it was just an ordinary animal, even though its size seemed unusual. Kaiden, in the form of a cat, just stared at him silently with an unusually sharp gaze. Blues ignored it for a moment and prepared to find a place to recover. But at the same time, without him realizing it, Kaiden had already leapt into the air. In an instant, the cat landed right on top of Blues' head, gripping tightly with its sharp claws. Blues was startled and looked up, only to realize that the fat cat he had ignored earlier was now staring at him with an aura far from that of an ordinary animal, radiating a terrifying pressure right from above his head. Without hesitation, Kaiden immediately channeled lightning power into Blues' body. In an instant, that tremendous surge of energy coursed through his opponent's entire body, causing Blues to be severely shocked by the power Kaiden unleashed in his cat form. On the other hand, Kaiden, who was also in cat form, could only stand frozen watching the scene. He stared in disbelief at how Kaiden was still able to unleash such a terrifying lightning ability, even while in the body of a cat. Silently, Kaiden kept wondering how something like that could happen. A few moments later, the afternoon at Jaewo's house began to feel calm. Pluton, who was now also in the form of a dog, looked busy licking the bruises he got after his fight against Blues. Not long after, Jaewo came in carrying a first aid kit. He emphasized that Pluton's wounds wouldn't heal quickly if he just licked them like that. Around them, Jaewo's 2 cats also circled Pluton, licking his body, while one of them looked on with a worried expression. Seeing Jaewo's arrival, Pluton let out a long sigh and asked why Jaewo wanted to treat him. Jaewo sincerely replied that he felt it was something he had to do because Pluton was hurt. As Jaewo sat beside him, Pluton explained that the wound was not an ordinary one, and medicine might not help much. Jaewo asked if it was true, but still applied the ointment to the wound, while saying that at least the medicine could help a little rather than not at all. Pluton just stayed silent, no longer arguing. Gently, Jaewo then took Pluton's hand and began treating his wounds one by one. In the middle of that silence, Pluton asked if Jaewo had seen his previous fight. He also said that if Jaewo trained harder, then Jaewo could also reach that level of strength. Those words reignited Jaewo's spirit. He admitted that it was hard to imagine himself having a body as strong as Pluton's. With confidence, Pluton explained that Blues' attacks didn't affect him at all and were even easy to dodge. Jaewo listened in awe. For a moment, Jaewo fell silent and got lost in his own thoughts. Then he thanked Pluton for saving him. According to Jaewo, without Pluton's help, he and his friends might not have made it home safely. Pluton let out a soft sigh and responded that Jaewo didn't need to thank him like that, because all he did was fulfill his promise to Kaiden to protect Jaewo until Kaiden fully recovered. However, Jaewo still sincerely expressed his gratitude for the protection he received. Seeing that expression, Pluton fell silent for a moment, looking a bit awkward. Jaewo then smiled gently. Meanwhile, Pluton's tail unconsciously began to move slowly. Not long after, night began to fall and the sky turned dark. In the basement, Jaewo was seen practicing controlling his energy, which spread out and filled the entire room. With his eyes closed and full concentration, he stayed focused. His memory returned to the battle against Blues, when his attacks couldn't hurt his opponent at all. In his mind, Jaewo realized that if it happened again in the future, the situation could become much more dangerous. From that moment, his determination to become stronger grew even firmer. The controlling energy around Jaewo also began to rise, spreading more powerfully throughout the room. Meanwhile, outside, the house lights had been turned on. In the living room, Jaewo's cats were relaxing on the sofa. Kaiden then came in carrying some snacks and asked if Jaewo was still training in the basement. Kaiden replied that Jaewo hadn't come out since earlier. Kaiden, filled with curiosity, then turned to Pluton, who was chewing on his bone toy. He then asked why Blues had attacked Jaewo earlier. Pluton then explained that Gestela had ordered him to kill Kaiden, and that Blues initially came just to keep an eye on him. However, when Blues found out that Jaewo was Kaiden's student, he immediately changed his target and tried to take him out. Hearing that, Kaiden confirmed again in a surprised tone, asking if Gestela was in the top 10. He then turned to ask Kaiden what the real reason was that Gestela held such a personal grudge against him. Kaiden answered casually, saying that basically there were many people who wanted to kill him. That answer made Kaiden just sigh deeply. He became even more confused by the situation, which sounded increasingly complicated. However, Kaiden added that thanks to Pluton, he was still able to handle Blues. Although Blues managed to escape before being completely defeated, Kaiden was sure that his opponent was still far from recovered. Kaiden also emphasized that without Pluton intervening first, he might have had difficulty dealing with Blues. Hearing that, Pluton just glanced at Kaiden with a confident expression. Kaiden then shared his view that there would likely be more attempts to kill Jaewo in the future, considering that Blues was not an easy opponent to face, and his presence showed that their enemies would not stop so easily. All parties involved surely understood just how dangerous Blues' reputation really was. For a moment, Pluton fell silent while still biting his bone toy, lost in his own thoughts. On the other hand, Kaiden also gazed up at the sky, as if considering the various possibilities that might come. Meanwhile, elsewhere, the afternoon slowly turned into dusk as the sun began to set on the horizon. The surroundings looked barren, with not a single green plant left. In a quiet room, someone stood facing the altar, while the afternoon sunlight streamed in through the cracks and illuminated the figure. Not long after, a subordinate came bringing bad news that Blues could not be reached. He suspected something had happened to Blues, and the news left Gestela, who was praying in her white robe, silent and shocked. Gestela then asked if Blues had been attacked by Kaiden. However, his subordinate could not confirm that, although he realized that very few people besides Kaiden were capable of doing anything to Blues. Hearing that explanation, Gestela remained silent without giving a response. Meanwhile, the subordinate unconsciously glanced to the side and sensed an unusual energy around him. When he turned around, a terrifying scene immediately appeared around him. Piles of scattered corpses were stacked on top of each other, with pools of blood covering the floor. In his panic, he realized that losing Blues would be a huge blow to their strength. Although on the other hand, he also admitted that Blues had been difficult to control from the very beginning. Suddenly, Gestela, who had been kneeling before, slowly stood up. The white robe covering his body began to fall away, revealing his true form. The subordinate was stunned when he realized the change. Beneath the robe, Gestela stood in dark red high heels that stood out in the tense atmosphere. Then, with a firm and confident voice, Gestela declared that he himself would take action to kill Kaiden the Destroyer. A few moments later, the afternoon at Jaewo's house felt calm but filled with an invisible tension. Inside the room, Jaewo looked anxious and asked again if it was true that Pluton had come because he received a request from the top 10 rankers to kill Kaiden. Kaiden, who was enjoying a snack, calmly confirmed it. Meanwhile, Kaiden sat beside him, and several cats could be seen relaxing and playing around them. Then Jaewo remembered the previous conversation when Blues told Pluton that he no longer cared whether Pluton followed Gestela's orders or not, and that he would only take care of Pluton first before killing Kaiden. Jaewo's expression darkened, and in his mind, he finally understood the meaning behind Blues' words at that time. With a worried tone, Jaewo then asked about Pluton's whereabouts. Kaiden said Pluton had recently gone out to check the area and ensure no strangers were near their house. Hearing that, Jaewo fell even more silent and looked gloomy. Jaewo then asked if Kaiden was really okay. Kaiden, who was still enjoying his snack, responded calmly and asked what the question meant. With a worried expression, Jaewo reminded Kaiden that he already knew Pluton was after his life. Those words made Kaiden a little confused. Meanwhile, Kaiden casually asked what the problem was with that. Jaewo immediately emphasized that the situation was not that simple, because someone who has been by their side for a long time now intends to kill Kaiden. Hearing that, Kaiden and Kaiden both fell silent and stared at Jaewo for a moment. Kaiden then let out a slow sigh and reminded them again that he had explained the same thing from the beginning. According to Kaiden, mutants have always lived by risking their lives. However, Jaewo insisted that this situation was different, especially because the one involved was Pluton, the person who had always been by their side. Jaewo's raised tone startled one of the cats. Kaiden then explained further that what he meant was he didn't care about anyone who wanted to kill him, because from the very beginning, his life had always been at stake. In his view, there was no difference whether his opponent was a stranger or someone he knew. Hearing that explanation, Jaewo fell silent and couldn't say anything. Kaiden then added that in the end, Kaiden would indeed fight Pluton after he fully recovered, and that fight would most likely turn into a life-or-death battle. According to Kaiden, even if there was no intention to kill each other from the start, mutants often lost their lives in battles like that, because no one truly holds back when fighting to prove their strength. For Kaiden and Pluton, a battle like that is inevitable. However, Kaiden responded to it calmly. He even felt grateful because his opponent was Pluton. He considered Pluton to be a rather straightforward person, and he was sure that Pluton would wait until he had fully recovered before actually fighting. Hearing that, Jaewo's worries only grew deeper. Meanwhile, Kaiden could only sigh deeply seeing Jaewo's unchanged reaction. Kaiden then warned Jaewo not to beg Kaiden to avoid the fight. Those words surprised Jaewo, and from his expression, it was clear that he had that desire from the beginning. Kaiden had already suspected it. Then Kaiden explained that Kaiden and Pluton are basically the same, because both of them have gone through countless battles to prove their strength. That's why asking them not to fight is the same as asking them to deny their own identity. Hearing that explanation, Jaewo fell silent again. His expression grew even gloomier. Meanwhile, the atmosphere in the room felt heavier amid the long silence. Jaewo then asked Kaiden again if the person who ordered Pluton to kill him was one of the top 10 ranked mutants. Kaiden confirmed it and said that the mutant introduced himself as Gestela. Hearing that name, Jaewo's curiosity grew even stronger. He then asked what Gestela was really like. Kaiden was silent for a moment, then explained that Gestela was clearly not an ordinary person, considering his position in the top 10. In fact, Gestela is the only person who has ever accepted one of Kaiden's challenges directly. That explanation surprised Kaiden. He then made sure again whether Gestela had really agreed to fight Kaiden. Kaiden confirmed it, although he admitted that there were certain conditions that meant they couldn't fight at full capacity. However, since Gestela still showed up on the battlefield, Kaiden acknowledged him as one of the strongest in the top 10. While giving a snack to the brown cat beside him, Kaiden muttered that he never expected Gestela to have a side like that. The conversation between Kaiden and Kaiden, who seemed to treat fighting and even risking their lives as something normal, left Jaewo silent, finding it hard to accept that reality. Outside Jaewo's house, the evening sky looked so beautiful, in contrast to the anxiety he felt. With his head bowed, Jaewo stepped outside and stopped in front of the house gate, lost in his chaotic thoughts. Worry kept haunting him. Imagining what would happen if Kaiden and Pluton really fought each other, the image of a fight ending in blood made him even more anxious, to the point where he considered the worst possibility that one of them might lose their life. That thought made his chest feel tight, and he took a deep breath to try to calm himself down. Suddenly, a voice greeted him from behind, asking what he was doing outside the house. When Jaewo turned around, he saw Pluton had just returned. Jaewo then sat down and leaned against the fence, while Pluton approached and asked if something had happened because Jaewo didn't look okay. After taking a deep breath, Jaewo finally expressed his concerns about the fight between Pluton and Kaiden. With an anxious expression, Jaewo thought that at first the fight was just a regular duel, but he didn't expect that both of them would fight to the point of risking their lives. He also added that all this time he saw Kaiden and Pluton seemed like friends, so he hoped the fight wouldn't go that far. Pluton fell silent upon hearing that, without giving a direct answer. A moment later, he said that he felt the same way, but it was Kaiden himself who said that they would fight after Kaiden had fully recovered. Jaewo also realized that Kaiden had known about it from the beginning. Pluton then added that fighting against Kaiden also carried its own burden for him, because no one knew when such an opportunity would come again. He was sure that Kaiden understood the same thing. Hearing that, Jaewo fell silent and hugged his knees, sinking deeper into his anxiety. Pluton just sighed softly, watching Jaewo, who was clearly filled with worry. Then Pluton tried to calm him down, assuring Jaewo that he didn't need to worry too much. He assured him that the fight would only begin after Kaiden had fully recovered, and that he would keep that promise. Hearing that, Jaewo finally expressed his sincere gratitude. Pluton then walked slowly, while reminding him that it was getting dark, and Jaewo should go back inside the house. However, in the middle of his steps, he suddenly stopped, sensing a very familiar energy. While observing his surroundings, Pluton silently wondered about the aura he felt, as if it came from someone he knew. Behind him, Jaewo was unaware of it, only noticing the strange red mist that suddenly appeared around him. But not long after, he realized something even more disturbing. The mist was slowly moving closer to him. Noticing the change, Pluton quickly turned around to check on Jaewo. In an instant, right before Pluton, Jaewo's body was lifted into the air and dragged away by the red mist that suddenly appeared without warning. That foreign energy wrapped tightly around him, as if pulling him away from the world he knew. At the same time, inside the house, Kaiden and Kaiden sensed the presence of another aura that suddenly slipped in and swept Jaewo's presence out of their reach. When the two of them rushed outside, all that was left was a trace of lingering red mist that slowly faded away, while Jaewo was no longer there. Realizing the situation, Kaiden was immediately overcome with panic and asked Pluton and Kaiden to quickly find Jaewo. With a sharp and suspicious expression, Kaiden immediately concluded that the red mist that had just appeared came from Gestela. Meanwhile, in a distant and barren place, Jaewo was lying on the cold, dry ground. His body was covered in sweat, and groans of pain slowly escaped with each breath. Not long after, his consciousness returned, just as a strange voice realized that he was finally awake. Jaewo immediately got up and found himself facing a woman. His gaze quickly observed the figure, who turned out to be Gestela's subordinate. In a regretful tone, the woman apologized for bringing him to that place so suddenly. Jaewo, who still didn't understand the situation, asked who the woman really was. As he turned further, he realized there was another figure approaching. Gestela's subordinate then introduced the figure as Miss Gestela. As Jaewo looked at her, he immediately recognized the name in his mind, one of the top 10 mutants in the world. Gestela's presence made Jaewo's body tense up. His forehead furrowed, and a cold tension spread, causing him to break out in sweat again. In front of him stood the figure he also knew as the person who wanted to kill Kaiden. Gestela's subordinates noticed Jaewo's expression turning serious, and concluded that Jaewo had already discovered their identities. Jaewo also confirmed that he had heard Gestela's name from Kaiden. Hearing that, Gestela finally spoke up. He asked again to make sure if Kaiden had really talked about him to Jaewo. Jaewo confirmed that he had. Gestela's aura instantly became more oppressive and intimidating, impacting Jaewo without physical contact. He repeated his question, wanting to know what Kaiden had said about him. The same question was repeated with sharper pressure, making Jaewo even more nervous, confused, and struggling to understand the true meaning of the situation he was now facing. For a moment, Jaewo fell silent. His eyes stared straight at Gestela, whose long hair seemed to move as if blown by an invisible wind. Without a single word, confusion was clearly written on his face as he tried to make sense of the situation before him. On the other hand, Gestela remained silent, returning Jaewo's gaze calmly but with intensity, as if waiting for an answer that could not be avoided. In that silence, Jaewo finally spoke, saying that Kaiden once mentioned Gestela as the top mutant, the most recognized among the top 10 ranks. The moment those words left his mouth, Jaewo fell silent again. A sense of unease slowly enveloped him. Gestela's subordinates nearby didn't react at all. They just observed. Gestela frowned. He expressed his curiosity as to why Kaiden acknowledged his existence in such a way. Hearing that, Gestela's subordinate just let out a quiet sigh, while Jaewo still stood there in confusion, staring at Gestela without being able to say anything more. Not long after, Gestela turned his gaze back to Jaewo and asked about Kaiden's current condition. That question made Jaewo freeze immediately. Gestela then continued, recalling that Kaiden had once fought against one of the top 10 ranked fighters, and although he emerged as the winner, he surely didn't escape without injuries. While staring at Jaewo more intently, Gestela asked again if Kaiden still hadn't fully recovered. Jaewo fell silent, then looked at him with a cold and wary expression. Seeing there was no answer, Gestela asked another question, this time about the estimated time for Kaiden's recovery. However, Jaewo firmly refused to give any answer. That attitude made Gestela frown, while the subordinate beside him looked annoyed and considered Jaewo to be rude. Gestela immediately raised his hand, signaling his subordinate not to interfere. In an instant, Gestela's aura turned oppressive, enveloping Jaewo with an indescribable pressure. He stated that even if Jaewo chose to remain silent, there were still many other ways to get the answer he wanted. Not long after, a red mist reappeared from Gestela's body, spreading quickly and beginning to surround Jaewo. In a cold tone, he asserted that Jaewo would experience unimaginable pain, until eventually he would have no choice but to answer all his questions without resistance. With an increasingly serious expression, Gestela intensified his pressure, letting his aura mercilessly suppress Jaewo. Jaewo's body began to tremble, as if every part of him was forced to withstand an invisible yet overwhelming pressure. Amidst that pressure, Jaewo could only remain silent, trying his best to withstand the force that was crushing him from all directions. For a moment, he looked nervous and stiff, as if he had lost any way to respond to the increasingly hostile situation. With his body already drenched in sweat, Jaewo finally declared that he would rather die than reveal anything to Gestela. That statement made Gestela frown, surprised by Jaewo's decision. Gestela then emphasized that Jaewo's choice was a big mistake. According to him, humans who are faced with pain beyond their usual limits will usually choose death rather than endure such suffering. From his point of view, pain should be far more frightening than death itself. and he questioned whether Jaewo was truly ready to face that level of suffering. Without waiting any longer, Gestela increased his pressure once again. The red mist around him grew thicker, trying to force Jaewo to give up and speak. Inside his mind, Jaewo began to panic. Even though Gestela was just standing still and emitting his aura, Jaewo felt as if all the air around him had disappeared, making it hard for him to breathe. Meanwhile, Gestela's subordinates, who were observing from a distance, began to realize something: that Jaewo, who was still very young, was actually able to withstand the pressure of Gestela's presence. On the other hand, Gestela actually showed interest. He judged that Jaewo was not only able to endure, but also managed to keep his sanity under pressure that should have already broken someone's mind. From there, he concluded that Jaewo truly intended to protect information about his master, even if it meant risking his life. Gestela then stated that he liked that kind of attitude. With a light motion, he snapped his fingers in the air. In an instant, the thick red mist that had been pressing down on Jaewo disappeared without a trace, as if it had never existed. For a moment, Jaewo was silent, trying to steady his ragged breathing. He looked at Gestela warily, wondering why the attack had stopped so suddenly. In his mind, he suspected that Gestela might still be planning to hurt him, just like the previous threat. But on the other hand, Jaewo also realized that just being under Gestela's aura pressure was already painful enough, and he began to doubt whether he could really endure it if the torment continued. With fear and anxiety weighing down on him, Jaewo closed his eyes and inwardly called for Kaiden to come quickly. Meanwhile, Gestela just watched Jaewo, who looked restless in front of her. For a moment, Jaewo lowered his head in the awkward silence between them. But when he looked at Gestela again, he felt that something didn't match the threat he had imagined before. With a voice still full of doubt, Jaewo asked when Gestela would start hurting him. But Gestela calmly replied that he had already said he liked Jaewo's attitude, so there was no reason to hurt him right away. That answer made Jaewo both surprised and confused. He then questioned the reason behind the change in attitude, mentioning that usually someone would torment their opponent while showing pleasure from their suffering, just like he often saw in fictional stories. Hearing that, Gestela actually looked confused and questioned whether any sane person would really do such a thing. That simple question made Jaewo fall silent, and in an instant, the atmosphere between them turned into an awkward and uncomfortable silence. Then Jaewo questioned again what Gestela's real purpose was in bringing him to that place, thinking that he was being used as a hostage to lure Kaiden. However, Gestela responded calmly, questioning why she would have to do something like that. Jaewo reiterated that Gestela's goal was to kill Kaiden, but Gestela simply confirmed it, saying that the one she wanted to kill was indeed Kaiden, not Jaewo. That straightforward answer only made Jaewo even more confused about the real intention behind Gestela's actions. Still confused, Jaewo asked again why he was brought to that place. While turning his face away, Gestela explained that he just wanted to know Kaiden's current condition. However, there was something more important to him, which was meeting Jaewo directly without anyone else's interference, because Jaewo was the only student chosen by Kaiden. Hearing that explanation, Jaewo became even more lost and was unable to respond. Not long after, Gestela turned around and stated that their meeting was enough for now and that he would end it there. Gestela's attitude of not taking any dangerous actions only made Jaewo even more confused and nervous, as if what was happening was too easy to believe. As Gestela was about to leave, Jaewo called him back and tried to hold back his curiosity. Gestela turned around for a moment and asked what else he wanted to say. With a clearly hesitant expression, Jaewo asked if Gestela was really going to let him go just like that. The question made Gestela fall silent for a moment. Then he briefly replied that he had just remembered something. That answer immediately made Jaewo tense again. In his mind, he thought this was the part where the situation would turn bad, just as he had initially suspected that Gestela wouldn't let him go so easily. But Gestela just calmly moved one of his hands. Jaewo, reflexively preparing for the worst, immediately became fully alert. But what happened was the opposite. Gestela stepped closer and apologized, explaining that he would move Jaewo back to the front of his house. Jaewo, still trembling, was confused by the change in attitude. Following Gestela's subordinate's instructions, he was asked to stand a little farther away, and Jaewo followed the order with great hesitation. Suddenly, the red mist reappeared and began to spread over Jaewo's body. The same mist that had previously taken him away from home now enveloped him again, as if preparing to return him to where he came from. At the same time, Gestela explained that Jaewo had fainted the first time he was brought here, because he resisted the flow of energy. However, if Jaewo no longer resisted, he would remain conscious and be able to return safely. Hearing that, Jaewo finally agreed, still a bit nervous. In his mind, he began to realize that Gestela was not entirely as he had imagined. Although intimidating, there was a side that actually felt less dangerous than he initially thought. The red mist grew thicker, completely enveloping Jaewo's body in the middle of it. As Gestela prepared to send him back, Jaewo suddenly sensed something different in the air. Another presence approaching quickly. Gestela also turned in another direction, sensing a strange aura entering the area. In an instant, a streak of powerful lightning fell from the sky and struck the barren ground around them, emitting a blinding light. Not long after that, behind the remaining flashes of lightning still spreading, a red energy shield appeared. A brief silence enveloped the place before Gestela finally frowned, realizing that someone had come to interrupt the situation. Amidst the tension still hanging in the air, Gestela was seen under the protection of her shield along with her subordinate. The energy around them still felt heavy, as if it could explode at any moment. In front of her, Kaiden finally appeared and stood right in front of Jaewo, marking the beginning of an inevitable confrontation. The atmosphere instantly grew cold, tense with the pressure of two opposing forces. With an unwavering sharp gaze, Gestela called out to Kaiden, who had just arrived at the location, as if to emphasize that she had indeed been waiting for this meeting. Meanwhile, Kaiden looked back with a cynical and calm expression, calling Gestela the person who had previously kidnapped Jaewo, making it clear that his presence this time was not without reason, but to finish what had been started. Kaiden's sudden appearance surprised Jaewo. Meanwhile, in front of him, Gestela stood with her subordinates in tense silence. In the midst of that situation, Kaiden checked on Jaewo's condition, and Jaewo stated that he was fine. Gestela, feeling offended, then questioned Kaiden's attitude, as if accusing her of wanting to hurt his student. However, Kaiden considered that Gestela's act of kidnapping Jaewo was already enough reason not to question that matter. Gestela defended herself by saying that she only wanted to meet Jaewo directly without Kaiden's interference, because Kaiden's presence would only hinder their conversation. Kaiden replied that if Gestela's true intention was only to meet, then he would not hesitate to stop her if there was any threat. Kaiden's attitude only made Gestela even more annoyed. She emphasized that she didn't need anyone's permission to meet whoever she wanted, including Jaewo, and the reason for bringing Jaewo to that place was already clear to her. Kaiden then asked what Gestela's next goal was after that meeting took place. The question made Gestela fall silent and frown. Kaiden continued by bringing up the previous failed attempt to kill Jaewo and questioned Gestela's current motives again. Those words made Gestela's emotions rise, and he held back his anger, which was visible from his clenched fists. He strongly denied that he had kidnapped Jaewo with the intent to kill him and said that Kaiden misunderstood him. Kaiden remained calm and believed that the facts on the ground were already clear, especially after one previous attempt had failed. The statement left Gestela speechless in shock. He then asked for an explanation about the failure Kaiden mentioned. Firmly, Kaiden revealed that Blues, Gestela's closest aide, had once tried to kill Jaewo. Hearing this, Gestela was truly shocked. Kaiden then expressed that he was disappointed because he thought Gestela would never harm his student. However, his subordinate immediately denied it, emphasizing that Gestela had never given any orders related to the attack. Hearing that denial, Jaewo was also surprised and began to question the truth of the situation, because from the beginning, he felt that Gestela had no intention of killing him. In the midst of that confusion, Jaewo, who was still behind, finally called out to Kaiden, who then turned to look at him. Jaewo then explained to Kaiden that before Kaiden arrived, Gestela was actually planning to take him back home. Hearing that, Kaiden looked confused and asked for further explanation. On the other hand, Gestela's subordinate confirmed Jaewo's statement. He explained that Blues was known for often acting on his own and had previously caused a lot of trouble, so he was sure that the incident involving Jaewo was Blues acting on his own, not an order from Gestela. He tried to convince Kaiden that Gestela never gave such instructions. However, Gestela immediately stopped his subordinate's explanation. He stated that even though he was not directly aware of what happened, the fact remained that the action was still carried out by Blues, who was under his command. Therefore, he considered that the mistake was also his responsibility. Hearing that, his subordinate looked anxious. Then Gestela shifted his gaze toward Jaewo. Jaewo noticed the look and tensed up for a moment. Gestela then asked who he was, and Jaewo introduced himself as Jaewo Seo. Upon hearing the name, Gestela placed one hand on his chest and bowed his head. In front of Kaiden and Jaewo, he offered an apology. His words surprised his subordinates. Kaiden too looked at Gestela, humbling himself without any surprise. Meanwhile, Jaewo himself looked confused by such a drastic change in attitude. With his head still bowed, Gestela emphasized that even though he was not directly responsible for the incident, his subordinate's mistake was still his responsibility. He expressed the apology with complete sincerity. Hearing this, Jaewo still looked confused. Meanwhile, Kaiden remained silent without any reaction. Gestela then continued by stating that as a form of responsibility, he was willing to personally help Jaewo if there was anything he needed. That statement surprised his subordinates and Kaiden, who did not expect Gestela to offer such significant help. His subordinates even realized that the help included Gestela's own power and influence, something that was rarely ever given, even on a single occasion. On the other hand, he also realized how great Jaewo's potential was, to the point where he could have enough influence to shake a country if he wanted to. Behind Kaiden, Jaewo then hesitantly asked if Gestela was really willing to help him. Gestela answered firmly that he was serious. Jaewo glanced at Kaiden, and Kaiden noticed the look without reacting. Jaewo then requested to use the help right away. Gestela double-checked if that was really what Jaewo wanted, and Jaewo confirmed that it was what he needed. Hearing the decision, his subordinates fell silent, while Gestela allowed Jaewo to state his request. After a brief pause filled with hesitation, Jaewo finally gathered his courage and made an unexpected request, asking Gestela to stop targeting Kaiden. That request left Kaiden, Gestela, and everyone present in stunned silence, completely unprepared for Jaewo's request to go that far. Kaiden turned sharply toward Jaewo and raised his voice, asking Jaewo to be more serious in making his request. Meanwhile, Gestela calmly suggested that Jaewo reconsider his decision. He emphasized that the offer of help he had just given was not something that could be given easily. Gestela reiterated that Jaewo should ask for something else for his own benefit. However, Jaewo remained adamant, remembering that the request was in line with his promise. From his point of view, Gestela himself had expressed his willingness to help, so he did not want to change that decision. Gestela let out a long sigh, feeling that Jaewo still did not understand the meaning of the offer he had given. He even added that if Jaewo wanted, he could offer a country as a place to live. However, Jaewo remained firm in his stance, stating that right now, Kaiden was more important than anything else that could be offered. In his mind, Jaewo remembered that Kaiden had not fully recovered after the fight against one of the top 10 ranked opponents. He also realized that Kaiden was not in his best condition when the battle happened. For Jaewo, a situation like this would be very dangerous if Kaiden was hunted again by other powerful mutants. Jaewo's mind went back to the times they spent together. Kaiden, Kaiden, Pluton and his cats, in much calmer times. In contrast to that, the threat from Gestela and Pluton targeting Kaiden meant Jaewo could not accept the situation. Kaiden then stated that Jaewo's request was quite difficult to fulfill. He emphasized that he never intended to avoid fighting Gestela. According to him, for mutants, fighting is always something that involves risking their lives. Jaewo immediately responded in a firm voice, saying that he understood that. He never asked Kaiden to stop fighting. He just hoped that the fight would be postponed until Kaiden had fully recovered. Hearing that, Kaiden fell silent and frowned. Jaewo, who was starting to get emotional, with reddened eyes and almost in tears, pleaded again for his request to be considered, at least for his sake. Kaiden tried to explain that the situation was not only difficult for him, but also for Gestela. He emphasized that if it weren't for Kaiden's current condition, Gestela could actually be in a more dangerous position in the fight. According to him, Gestela and the others might want to finish him off before he fully recovers, because that is considered the best opportunity. Gestela, who heard the explanation, fell silent without any reaction. Jaewo's tears finally fell, and he could only nod quietly. Kaiden then glanced at Gestela and apologized, thinking that Jaewo had asked for something excessive. However, Kaiden's statement actually provoked a reaction from Gestela. With a serious look, she questioned whether Kaiden really thought she was after him, just because she was afraid of Kaiden's power in the future. Kaiden, hearing that, looked confused and just blinked, as if unsure whether there was a misunderstanding in what he said. In an instant, Gestela showed an annoyed expression. Her body trembled as she struggled to contain emotions she hadn't fully let out. She then stated that there was no point in continuing the conversation any further. Gestela turned around and left with her subordinates, while saying that she would reconsider Jaewo's request another time. After Gestela left, everything fell silent, leaving Jaewo and Kaiden equally confused. Kaiden looked annoyed and questioned whether Gestela really just left like that. Meanwhile, Jaewo remained silent, nervous, and lost in his own thoughts. Jaewo and Kaiden were back at home at night, accompanied by a calm atmosphere that contrasted with the previous events. In the midst of that silence, Kaiden, in his cat form, scratched his ear while questioning whether Gestela really let Jaewo go just like that. Kaiden also brought up blues again and wondered if Gestela really never gave the order to kill Jaewo. Jaewo then confirmed that Gestela never gave such an order. He even explained that Gestela had been polite from the start, took responsibility for Blues' mistake himself, and apologized for the incident. Kaiden, who was leaning on the sofa, let out a long sigh, still remembering his shock at that time. He mentioned that it was very rare for someone in the top 10 to end up apologizing, as if they were the ones who set the rules in their own world. While enjoying his warm tea, Jaewo added that Gestela even offered personal help, even if only once, as a form of responsibility for the incident involving Blues. That statement surprised Pluton and Kaiden, as they did not expect Gestela to go that far. Pluton checked again whether that was true, and Jaewo emphasized that Gestela did indeed say it. Kaiden then concluded that Gestela seemed to leave an unusual first impression on Jaewo, and Pluton agreed with that assessment. However, the atmosphere changed when Kaiden glanced at Kaiden and questioned the reason behind Gestela's interest in targeting someone considered to have no significant value. Kaiden, who was tearing up a snack, looked confused by the question. Kaiden stared sharply at Kaiden, as if suspecting that something had been overlooked. Kaiden didn't understand the accusation, while Pluton fell silent, appearing deep in thought. In his mind, Pluton began to consider the possibility that Gestela was holding a grudge against Kaiden, especially after the order to kill Jaewo had surfaced. Jaewo and Kaiden's reactions turned to surprise. They didn't expect that the relationship between Gestela and Kaiden could lead to something deeper. Kaiden then urged Kaiden to explain in more detail what really happened between him and Gestela. Kaiden calmly flicked his tail, stating that he didn't feel like he had done anything significant besides meeting and a brief duel. However, Kaiden did not simply accept that explanation and requested more detailed information again. Kaiden then closed his eyes for a moment before finally deciding to explain everything. The whole room fell silent, while Jaewo, Pluton, Kaiden, and the other cats got ready to listen. Kaiden explained that, as everyone knew, all of the top 10 rankers initially refused his challenge to fight. He had waited in their territory for days, but none of them were willing to face him. In the end, only one person accepted the challenge, and that was Gestela. Kaiden mentioned that Gestela was the only one among the top rankers who accepted the duel, so a brief fight between them took place. Hearing that, Kaiden, who remained calm while enjoying his snack, asked about the continuation of the duel, as if realizing that the most important part of the story had not yet been fully revealed. Kaiden then mentioned that Kaiden actually already understood what would happen next. With a serious expression, Kaiden explained that as soon as he met Gestela, he immediately activated his divine judgment power without hesitation. That statement left Kaiden, Jaewo, and Pluton speechless in shock. Pluton considered Kaiden's move to be the right decision, because using full power from the start is an effective strategy, especially when facing an opponent in the top 10. Kaiden also agreed with that. With full confidence, Kaiden emphasized that this fight was the first time he had faced one of the top 10 ranked opponents. Since that moment, he admitted that he started to feel the urge to keep fighting and to take advantage of every chance he got. The conversation between Kaiden and Kaiden, which kept revolving around the battle, left Jaewo silent, feeling out of place with the intensity of their discussion. Back in the past, at Gestela's residence, long before the battle between Kaiden and Gestela ever happened. At that time, Gestela seemed to be soaking his feet in a warm water pool. Red rose petals floated on the surface, spreading a gentle fragrance that calmed the atmosphere around him. In the midst of that calm, a subordinate approached and informed him that Kaiden had contacted them once again. Even according to his subordinate, he himself was no longer sure how many times this had happened. While handing over a newly received letter, he explained that Kaiden had been sending letters consistently for years without ever stopping. Gestela then opened the letter and began to read it. However, after only a moment of reading its contents, she seemed to fall silent for a while, lost in her own thoughts. In the letter, it was written that ever since Kaiden became aware of that world, Gestela had always been his purpose in life. The figure of Gestela had never once left his heart. Now, Kaiden believed that he had the right to stand by Gestela's side. Moments after reading the entire contents of the letter, Gestela slowly let out a long sigh. Not long after, she ordered her subordinate to send a reply to Kaiden, as well as to ask about the time and location he wanted for their meeting. Hearing the order, the subordinate looked surprised, as if he didn't expect that decision to come from Gestela. According to Gestela, there has never been anyone at the top of the rankings like her who has been continuously contacted by the same person for years. Upon hearing that reason, his subordinate fell silent. For Gestela, if a letter comes with such conviction, it would feel rude if she didn't even take the time to meet the sender at least once. The subordinate finally understood the intention and immediately prepared to arrange the requested meeting. Not long after, Gestela walked toward her room. Meanwhile, her subordinate bowed his head as a sign of respect before leaving. Sometime later, in a place far from the crowds, there were no buildings or signs of life to be seen. All that stretched out was a vast expanse of barren, empty land. That was where Gestela finally arrived. Dressed in a neat and elegant brown suit, he came to fulfill Kaiden's request for a meeting. But as he looked around, Gestela felt that this was the strangest place anyone had ever chosen to confess their feelings. Not long after, from behind, Kaiden appeared and approached Gestela. After that, Kaiden fell silent. His gaze was fixed straight at the figure who had always filled his thoughts. In his heart, he never expected that Gestela would actually accept his invitation. Hearing that, Gestela only gave a small nod without saying a single word. A moment later, Gestela observed Kaiden's appearance more closely. At that moment, Kaiden stood with a faint smile on his face. He was wearing a simple black jacket, paired with a white t-shirt that looked tattered from age and the long journey he had been through. For a moment, a hint of shyness appeared on Gestela's face. She quickly turned her gaze away so that Kaiden wouldn't notice her expression. Not wanting to linger in an awkward atmosphere, Gestela asked Kaiden to quickly do whatever he had wanted to do all this time. And after such a long wait, Kaiden finally declared that he would begin. Suddenly, the ground beneath Gestela's feet started coursing with Kaiden's lightning energy. Bolts of electricity crawled across the ground, like glowing snakes moving swiftly, spreading a menacing aura in all directions. Seeing that sight, Gestela looked confused. He fell silent for a moment when he realized that the lightning was slowly surrounding him, forming a tightening encirclement from every side. His expression turned to shock when he finally understood what was happening. In front of him, Kaiden apparently did not come for the purpose he had imagined. Kaiden came to attack him. At that moment, with a sinister grin on his face, Kaiden immediately unleashed his main power, the lightning of divine judgment. The burst of tremendous energy shot toward Gestela, who was still frozen, staring at the incoming attack. In an instant, Kaiden's attack became something impossible to avoid. Previously, Gestela thought that the man had come to confess his feelings, not to start such a brutal fight. The memory of that first meeting flashed back in Gestela's mind. Everything she experienced with Kaiden at that time made her upset. Now, she just sat on the sofa, recalling the events that still lingered in her mind. Beside her, a subordinate revealed that every time he remembered Kaiden's attitude, his teeth would chatter in annoyance. According to his subordinate, Kaiden was not only pretending not to have made mistakes that he clearly had committed. Now, the man even accused Gestela of trying to kill him by taking advantage of his injured state. Those words made Gestela feel a mix of shame and anger inside. Suddenly, she remembered Kaiden's words expressing his disappointment in her. That memory made Gestela's mood even worse. In the middle of their conversation, the sound of footsteps was heard from outside the room. Not long after, someone entered Gestela's room. In front of Gestela, Blues appeared with his body covered in severe wounds. His condition looked miserable, and his voice trembled as he called Gestela's name. Upon arriving before the leader, Blues immediately knelt down. His weakened body seemed barely able to support himself anymore. Seeing his condition, Gestela immediately asked what had actually happened. Blues then explained that he had been ambushed by Pluton. He also felt that Pluton no longer had any desire to follow Gestela's orders. However, that was not what Gestela wanted to know right now. With an oppressive aura and an intimidating tone, Gestela asked a much more important question. He wanted to know the reason why Blues tried to eliminate Jaewo, Kaiden's disciple. Hearing that question, Blues felt that his actions were necessary to disrupt Kaiden's mental state. Besides that, he also believed that Jaewo would become a major threat in the future if he were simply left alive. Suddenly, the red mist from Gestela's power began to slowly creep around Blues' body. The mist moved like a living creature stalking its prey, surrounding Blues from all directions. Without any warning, Gestela moved as fast as lightning. In an instant, his hand was already gripping Blues' neck tightly. The anger that had been held back all this time finally erupted. Gestela demanded an answer about who had ever given him permission to go that far. Seeing Gestela's immense anger, Blues looked shocked. He never expected that his actions would provoke such a strong reaction. Slowly but surely, the grip on his neck grew tighter. The pressure Gestela applied kept increasing, making it hard for Blues to breathe. His body started to tremble violently. With a trembling, fear-filled voice, he begged Gestela for forgiveness. In front of Gestela's subordinates, a groan of pain escaped from Blues' mouth. At the same time, a thick red mist burst into the air and filled the room with a suffocating pressure. Now, Blues could be seen lowering his head, half unconscious. Thick red mist was still emanating from his body, the remnants of the attack that had just been unleashed by Gestela. After that, Gestela ordered his subordinates to take Blues away and lock him up. The subordinates immediately obeyed the order without daring to protest. In front of Gestela, several subordinates could be seen trying to carry Blues, who no longer had the strength to stand on his own. As they were about to take Blues away, Gestela reiterated her order in a cold and authoritative voice. Until she gave her next instructions, no one was allowed to let Blues out of his confinement. Okay, the story ends here. Hopefully, all of you were entertained by this content. My highest appreciation goes to all the creators behind this comic with its interesting story. I hope that this retelling can be a fitting tribute to their work. Please continue to support the original comic. The title is available in the description. Creating quality content truly takes time and patience. From narration, cleaning up the images, to editing everything as best as possible for the best viewing experience. So, please be patient while waiting for updates from me. Or if you can't wait, you can go ahead and read the original comic. If you like my content, don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, share your thoughts in the comments section. And remember, let's respect each other's different tastes. I hope you all stay healthy. See you in more interesting content.